Hey guys, you know that feeling when you catch yourself doing something you swore you wouldn't do again? Making the same choice, saying the same thing, picking the same person, and you have no idea why? Tonight, we're going to find out why. We're diving into 50 habits, 50 invisible switches your brain has been flipping without asking your permission. Some of them kept your ancestors alive, sharpening their senses, protecting them from danger. But now, those same instincts are keeping you stuck, repeating, looping, stuck in the same groove, wondering why you can't seem to break free. The wild part is once you see how they work, you'll start catching yourself in real time. Not in a judgmental way, just aware. Before we sink into this, tell me something. Where are you right now? What time is it for you? I'm genuinely curious who's settling in for this. Get comfortable. Turn the lights down. Let your shoulders drop. This doesn't require you to think hard or fix yourself. Just listen. Just notice. Because awareness is where everything shifts. Let's go. Habit 1. The default mode network bias. Why do you always end up making the same choice, even when you swear you're being different this time? There's a silent mechanism in your brain called the default mode network, a set of interconnected regions that light up whenever your mind isn't actively focused on a task. It hums quietly in the background during your commute, your morning shower, or those moments when you're staring out the window, lost in thought. And while it feels like daydreaming, what it's really doing is rehearsing your identity, looping through the same thoughts, preferences, and emotional associations that define your sense of you. The default mode network consumes almost 20% of your brain's resting energy. It's designed for efficiency, not change. When you're tired, stressed, or on autopilot, it acts like an algorithm, pulling from what's already worked before. It replays familiar neural pathways, like well-worn trails in the forest of your mind. And because novelty costs energy, it suppresses unfamiliar options, even when those options could lead to better outcomes. Imagine you've promised yourself to eat healthier. But after a long day, when your brain is fatigued, you find yourself reaching for the same comfort food. Or maybe you've decided to explore a new career path, but when the uncertainty of job hunting arrives, you suddenly think, maybe my current job isn't that bad after all. That's not indecision. It's your default mode network quietly steering you back to the familiar, conserving energy by recycling past solutions. This mechanism creates what psychologists call decision ruts, invisible grooves in the mind that make life feel repetitive. It's not that you lack willpower or creativity. It's that your brain isn't even offering new choices for your conscious mind to consider. The illusion of freedom exists, but the menu of available options is filtered before you ever see it. To break this loop, you have to introduce friction. The next time you face a routine decision, what to eat, what to watch, where to go, pause. Name 2 alternatives aloud before you choose. That single moment of conscious interruption pulls the decision-making process from your default network into the prefrontal cortex, where awareness lives. You won't always choose differently, but for the first time, you'll actually be choosing. Habit 2. First information lock. The very first number, price, or idea you encounter about something literally rewires how you think about it, even when you know it's happening. That's the anchoring effect, one of the most quietly manipulative forces in your daily decision-making. It begins the instant your brain receives the first piece of information. That first input, whether it's a number, a statement, or a label, becomes an anchor, a gravitational center that subtly pulls every future judgment toward it. The posterior cingulate cortex, responsible for emotional association and memory retrieval, fuses that first impression with emotional weight. From that moment, your perception bends around it, like space curving around a star. You might walk into a house listed at $500,000. Even if you know it's overpriced, that number becomes your reference point. Every other house you see will feel cheap or expensive relative to that anchor. Or during a salary negotiation, the first offer locks your brain's expectation, pulling your counteroffer closer than logic would dictate. The same happens socially. If someone tells you he's a genius, you start interpreting his ordinary actions as intelligent, anchored to an idea that may have no basis in reality. This effect is so powerful that it persists even when the anchor is random or meaningless. In experiments, participants spun a wheel of fortune before estimating real-world numbers. Even though the spin was rigged and irrelevant, their estimates gravitated toward the random number shown. That's how primitive this mechanism is. It predates reason. Anchoring controls you by fixing your perception at the very first moment of contact. It explains why first impressions feel irreversible, why marketing works, and why even experts struggle to change their minds once an initial estimate has been made. To counter it, you must deliberately expose yourself to counter-anchors. Before forming an opinion, ask yourself, what are 3 other reference points I can look at? If someone calls a person toxic, ask a friend who knows them differently. If you're pricing your product, research multiple markets first. By widening the frame of reference, you dilute the first anchor's gravity. The goal isn't to reject the anchor, it's to realize you're tethered to it and gently loosen the rope. Habit 3. The asymmetry trap. You will move heaven and earth to avoid losing $100, but you won't celebrate gaining $100 with the same intensity. This imbalance, called loss aversion, is one of the most powerful invisible forces shaping your behavior. Your brain is built to fear loss more than it desires gain. In fact, losses feel about 2.5 times more painful than equivalent gains feel rewarding. This asymmetry evolved for survival. In the wild, losing food, shelter, or safety could mean death, while gaining extra resources was just a bonus. Over thousands of years, the amygdala, your brain's threat detector, learned to treat loss as a more urgent signal than opportunity. Today, that same circuitry runs your modern life. It's what keeps you clinging to a mediocre job because leaving feels like losing stability. It's what traps people in draining relationships because the pain of being alone feels worse than the discomfort of staying. It's why you hesitate to invest, start a business, or try something new, because the idea of losing money, time, or face feels heavier than the joy of potential success. Loss aversion doesn't just affect your finances or relationships, it shapes your identity. It makes you defend outdated beliefs and routines simply because changing them feels like losing part of yourself. You end up guarding what no longer serves you, mistaking protection for preservation. To loosen its grip, you have to reverse the frame. Instead of asking, what if I fail by leaving? Ask, what am I losing by staying? What happens if nothing changes for 5 years, 10 years? Suddenly, the status quo becomes the real loss, and growth becomes the safer option. When you reframe in this way, you hijack the same neural wiring that once trapped you. The amygdala doesn't care whether the loss is real or imagined. It only reacts to which scenario feels more threatening. By redefining staying the same as the loss, you can finally make movement feel like survival, not danger. Habit 4. The availability heuristic. The most recent scary news story is now defining how you think the world works. Not statistics, not probability, but the one vivid thing you remember. This is the availability heuristic, the brain's shortcut that mistakes ease of recall for truth. Your mind doesn't calculate likelihoods through logic. It relies on memory accessibility, how easily an example comes to mind. The hippocampus, the brain's memory center, prioritizes emotional salience and recency over frequency. That means events that are vivid, dramatic, or emotionally charged feel more common than they are. It's why we fear plane crashes after seeing one on the news, even though car accidents are exponentially more likely. This bias shapes far more than fear. It colors how you view success, failure, love, danger, and opportunity. If you hear constant stories about economic collapse, your brain starts perceiving the world as financially unstable, even during growth periods. If you know one person who got scammed online, you treat every digital transaction with suspicion. And if you read about one extraordinary startup founder, you might overestimate your own odds of similar success, not because it's likely, but because the story burns brighter in your mind. The availability heuristic controls you by feeding on emotional energy. Media, conversations, and social platforms exploit it perfectly. They flood your memory with vivid extremes, hijacking your sense of probability. As a result, your decisions lean towards safety, anxiety, or misplaced confidence, depending on which examples happen to dominate your awareness. The tragedy is that your subconscious doesn't distinguish between memory and frequency. It simply asks, what comes to mind first? And that answer becomes your worldview. To break the illusion, perform a quick mental audit. When making a decision, especially one involving risk, ask yourself, how many times have I personally seen this happen? How many times to people I actually know? Then compare that to real data. This single pause shifts your brain from availability to accuracy, from imagination to evidence. When you begin to notice how much of your fear and certainty is based on a few vivid memories instead of the full picture, life starts to feel less like chaos and more like clarity. You realize the world hasn't changed, just the stories that echo loudest in your mind. Habit 5. The commitment trap. You are continuing to pay for a gym membership, invest in a relationship, or stay on a career path not because it serves you, but because you've already invested so much that quitting feels like admitting failure. That's the quiet whisper of the sunk cost fallacy. The brain's need to justify its past choices, even when those choices no longer make sense. It begins as loyalty, but it grows into a trap. The sunk cost fallacy is your subconscious defending its own story, convincing you that leaving now would mean the story was wrong all along. In truth, the money, time, or energy you've already spent are gone. They belong to the past. Yet your mind doesn't see it that way. The anterior cingulate cortex, your brain's conflict monitor, flares up at the thought of waste. It feels like pain. Quitting feels like losing twice. First, what you already lost, and second, your identity as someone who doesn't give up. So you double down. You pour more hours into a project you don't love, keep showing up in friendships that drain you, or keep fixing a business that's sinking just to prove your past self wasn't wrong. But that's the illusion. The fallacy doesn't protect your future. It only guards your pride. You think you're being persistent. In reality, you're avoiding the discomfort of admitting change. It's not courage keeping you there. It's fear wearing the mask of commitment. The antidote is a single reframed question. If I were making this decision today, from scratch, would I still start? If the answer is no, then your investment has already served its purpose. It taught you what doesn't work. The only rational choice is to stop feeding the past and start honoring the present. Every time you let go of a sunk cost, you're not giving up. You're cutting the chain that ties your energy to yesterday's version of you. Habit 6. Confirmation bias, seeking your own truth. Your mind isn't searching for the truth. It's searching for evidence that supports what you already believe. Everything else, it simply doesn't see. Confirmation bias is the reason reality bends around your expectations. The prefrontal cortex prioritizes coherence. Your brain would rather feel consistent than be correct. So, when new information arrives, your subconscious filters it. Evidence that agrees feels obvious and trustworthy. Evidence that disagrees feels confusing, even suspicious. It's not stubbornness, it's structure. At the perceptual level, your selective attention literally edits out contradictions. When you're convinced someone doesn't like you, every neutral glance becomes proof. When you're sure you're unlucky, every small setback stands out in fluorescent color while the winds fade to gray. It's not that the truth is missing. It's that your brain has trained itself not to see it. This mechanism once helped our ancestors survive. Pattern recognition meant safety. But in the modern world, it isolates us. It creates echo chambers, not just online, but inside the mind. You stop learning because every new idea must first pass through the filter of your old beliefs. You stop changing because every contradictory emotion feels like betrayal to your identity. And that's how intelligent people become trapped in illusions that feel like insight. The more emotionally invested you are in a belief, the harder your mind fights to protect it. You think you're reasoning, you're really defending. To break the loop, use belief inversion. Take something you're absolutely certain about and argue the opposite for 5 minutes. You'll notice how quickly your brain starts finding support for the other side. It's unsettling, but also liberating. Because the moment you see how flexible truth can be, You begin to reclaim control over your perception. Reality becomes less about defending what you think and more about discovering what's actually there. Habit 7. Underestimating time and effort. You genuinely believe you'll start that project, lose that weight, or change that habit in a time frame that is, statistically, about 40% shorter than reality. It's not optimism. It's architecture. The planning fallacy is your brain's elegant mistake. The lateral prefrontal cortex imagines the future, but it paints it in best-case colors. You see only the clean version of the plan. The obstacles, delays, and distractions don't feel real yet because the amygdala, your brain's threat detector, stays quiet during planning. It's why everything looks easy before it begins. Memory plays its role, too. When you think about similar past tasks, you recall them through semantic memory, a summarized highlight reel. You forget the tedious details, the hours lost to interruptions, the emotional drag. That's why you tell yourself, this time will be different. But it never is. You schedule the perfect week, only to collide with reality by Wednesday. You promise yourself the side project will take 3 hours, and it consumes your weekend. You commit to daily workouts, then life steps in, and guilt replaces energy. The trap is subtle. You think the problem is discipline, but it's actually prediction. Your brain is miscalibrated. It doesn't need more motivation. It needs better data. The fix is simple but radical. Measure your reality, not your imagination. Look at the last 3 times you attempted something similar. How long did it actually take? Add 40% to your new estimate. That's not pessimism. That's calibration. And when you plan from truth rather than hope, something shifts. Your goals stop collapsing under unrealistic timelines, and your progress begins to match your expectations. The planning fallacy doesn't mean you're lazy. It means your brain loves stories more than statistics. The story says, this time will be easier. The data says, it never was. The wise choice listens to data, then tells a new story, one that fits reality, not fantasy. Habit 8. Recency bias. The latest feels most true. The conversation you had yesterday is outweighing the 200 conversations before it. The last stock market movement is overriding your long-term strategy. Your most recent mood is redefining how you see your entire life. That's the grip of recency bias, the brain's tendency to treat the newest input as the most important one. Your mind mistakes availability for accuracy. Recent memories sit closer to the surface of awareness, easier to access, and so they feel more significant. The prefrontal cortex hasn't yet integrated them into context, and emotionally charged events form stronger memory traces, making them louder than everything else. You might experience it without realizing. One bad meeting makes you question your career. One argument makes you rethink a relationship. One new article makes you abandon your diet. The pattern is always the same. The most recent emotion hijacks the whole narrative. It's not irrational, it's adaptive. In ancestral times, new information could signal immediate danger. Reacting fast meant survival. But in modern life, the reflex to overvalue the recent creates volatility. You become reactive, not strategic, constantly rewriting your identity, your goals, your opinions based on whatever just happened. Recency bias is why your self-image fluctuates wildly. You feel capable on Monday and broken by Thursday, not because you've changed, but because your latest mood has overwritten your memory of consistency. It's why trends control markets, why headlines control attention, why one mistake can overshadow 1,000 efforts. To counter it, slow your interpretation loop. When a new event feels defining, apply the pattern test. Does this single data point outweigh the last 10 similar data points? If it doesn't, file it under temporary noise. Decision stability isn't about ignoring the present. It's about giving the past and present equal weight. The truth is rarely found in the latest moment. It's found in the average of many moments. And when you start to see your life that way, something inside you steadies. Your emotions stop tossing your direction around like a compass in a storm. You begin to see through time, not just through feeling. Habit 9. Impression amplification. That person is attractive, so you've already decided they're smarter, kinder, and more trustworthy. You've never consciously noticed that you do this. The mind loves simplicity, and the impression amplification is its shortcut for decoding people. One shining trait becomes the light that bathes every other impression in its glow. You meet someone articulate, and suddenly they seem intelligent. You meet someone confident, and they appear capable. You meet someone successful, and their opinions feel wise. The orbitofrontal cortex is the neural seat of this illusion. It binds single positive signals into global judgments, treating correlation as causation. The brain's pattern-matching machinery fills in the blanks. If one thing is good, the rest must be too. And once that assumption is formed, confirmation bias steps in. You start collecting evidence that supports your initial impression while quietly discarding anything that contradicts it. That's why physical attractiveness, confidence, and status carry so much hidden power. You don't mean to favor them. Your subconscious does it automatically. An attractive coworker seems more competent, even if their work is identical to everyone else's. A charismatic CEO seems moral and visionary, even when their decisions reveal ego. A friend known for being spontaneous gets excused for being unreliable because the halo has already reframed recklessness as charm. It's not only about positive halos, though. Negative ones, what psychologists call the horn effect, work the same way in reverse. One visible flaw contaminates every other judgment. You see someone anxious, and you label them weak. You notice disorganization, and you infer incompetence. Either way, you're not seeing the person, you're seeing the projection your mind builds around a single trait. The impression amplification quietly reshapes your relationships. You overestimate people who impress you early, and you undervalue those who reveal depth more slowly. You stay blind to red flags in people you admire and slow to forgive those you've placed under a shadow. To escape the glow, slow down your perception. When you form an opinion, write it down as two lists, what you noticed and what you're assuming. I noticed they're confident. I'm assuming they're competent. I noticed they're organized. I'm assuming they're trustworthy. The moment you separate observation from assumption, the halo dims, and you begin seeing people as they are, not as your brain wants them to be. Habit 10. The fundamental attribution error. Someone cuts you off in traffic, and you decide they're a reckless person. You cut someone off, and you know it's because you were distracted. This is the fundamental attribution error, the brain's bias to explain others' behavior through character, but your own through circumstance. It's a perspective glitch built into perception itself. You have a front row seat to your intentions, but only a highlight reel of others' actions. When you act, you feel your reasons, stress, fatigue, misunderstanding. When others act, all you see is the outcome. The mind fills in the missing context with character judgments. Neuroscience traces this asymmetry to the anterior cingulate cortex, which processes behavior differently depending on perspective. As the actor, your brain frames your actions as situational responses. As the observer, it treats others' behavior as revelations of who they are. Under cognitive load, when you're tired, busy, or emotional, your brain saves energy by skipping empathy entirely. It plays out everywhere. Your coworker misses a deadline. They're lazy. You miss a deadline. You were juggling too much. Your partner snaps. They're selfish. You snap. You were under pressure. The pattern never changes, and it corrodes understanding quietly. Every time you assign a moral label instead of considering circumstance, empathy dissolves a little. This error fuels resentment and miscommunication. You stop seeing people's full stories and start seeing caricatures. Conflicts grow, not because people are evil or careless, but because each person is trapped inside their own frame of reference. They think you're misunderstanding them, and they're right, because you are. To break it, add a pause between judgment and conclusion. When someone's behavior triggers you, generate 3 situational explanations. Maybe they're stressed. Maybe they're distracted. Maybe they're reacting to something invisible to you. Then flip the thought. If they could explain your bad days in 3 ways, wouldn't you want them to? That single mental exercise shifts perception from accusation to curiosity. The person in front of you stops being an obstacle and becomes human again. Habit 11. The false consensus effect. You believe your way of thinking, your values, and your interpretation of reality are far more widespread than they actually are. Everyone who disagrees feels like the strange exception. That's the false consensus effect. Your mind's assumption that your inner world is a shared world. It begins with familiarity. You are the most available person in your awareness. Every thought, preference, and opinion you have loops endlessly through the default mode network. Over time, it becomes the baseline of what normal feels like. Add to that the comfort of similarity. You naturally attract and keep people who share your attitudes, creating a social echo chamber that feels like objectivity. Availability bias strengthens the illusion. You mostly hear your own opinions echoed back, so you assume they're universal. You value financial security and think risk takers are reckless. You avoid conflict and think direct people are aggressive. You believe your political stance is common sense, while everyone else's is radical. This illusion quietly narrows your empathy. You begin to judge difference as deviance, diversity as danger. The mind prefers to believe that the world agrees with it, because disagreement threatens the stability of the self. In practice, the false consensus effect is what divides families, polarizes societies, and makes intelligent people dismissive of one another. It's the reason online debates feel like screaming into a mirror. Everyone believes they're representing the majority, and everyone can find enough people who agree with them to prove it. To escape, seek deliberate contrast. Find someone smart, kind, and thoughtful who lives by a completely different worldview. Ask them why, not to argue, but to understand their logic from the inside. Watch how quickly the illusion dissolves. You'll realize that others aren't you with wrong settings. They're the sum of different histories, environments, and emotional maps. That's when perception matures. The more you understand how different minds build different realities, the less you confuse agreement with truth. Curiosity becomes more valuable than being right, and suddenly the world stops looking insane. It starts looking diverse. Habit 12. The backfire effect. The more evidence you see that contradicts your belief, the stronger you believe it. That's not stubbornness, it's protection. The backfire effect is your brain defending its identity against perceived attack. When someone presents information that challenges your worldview, the anterior insula activates. It interprets the contradiction not as data, but as danger. The amygdala fires, flooding you with stress signals, while the prefrontal cortex shifts from analysis to defense. You don't evaluate the evidence, you look for flaws in it. You don't update your belief, you reinforce it to restore internal comfort. This process is strongest when beliefs are tied to identity. I am a rational person. I am a good parent. I am not gullible. Contradict those, and you're not just questioning a belief, you're questioning me. The self reacts like it's under attack. You've seen it play out. A conspiracy theorist doubles down when shown proof they're wrong. A diet enthusiast dismisses contrary studies as corrupt. A person who prides themselves on logic becomes defensive when shown their bias. The more emotionally invested you are, the more correction feels like humiliation, not learning. The backfire effect explains why facts rarely change minds. The correction attempt itself triggers the resistance. Each argument strengthens the fortress it's meant to dismantle. But awareness changes the wiring. The next time someone challenges a belief you hold dear, notice the microsecond of tension in your chest, the flicker of irritation or threat. That's the defense response forming. Instead of suppressing it, name it. This is my brain protecting me from discomfort. Then, ask the smallest possible question. Could I be wrong about this? You don't need to agree. You only need to allow possibility. That single question reopens the gate between threat and curiosity. Once curiosity enters, your brain starts doing what it was designed to do, learn. And slowly, the fear of being wrong becomes less than the relief of seeing clearly. Habit 13. The all eyes on me phenomenon. You were something slightly wrong, said something awkward, made a minor mistake, and now your brain replays it like a broken record, convinced everyone noticed, everyone judged, and everyone will remember. But they won't. Because here's the truth. Most people are far too busy worrying about their own tiny embarrassments to remember yours. The all eyes on me phenomenon is the illusion that the world is watching you, that your every stumble, every word, every imperfection is under a magnifying glass. But in reality, everyone's looking through their own lens. You're the main character in your story, but only a passing extra in theirs. Psychologically, it starts with egocentric bias. Your brain uses yourself as the reference point for attention. You feel your mistakes vividly because they're charged with emotion. You were there when it happened, so it feels monumental. But for others, it was just another flicker in the noise of their day. In brain terms, your posterior insula is partially to blame. It overweights your self-focused attention, exaggerating how central your actions are in the minds of others. You trip in public, and for hours afterward, you're sure everyone remembers the clumsy person. But they've already forgotten. They were too busy wondering if someone saw them check their phone awkwardly. You speak up in a meeting and stumble over your words. You spend the next day analyzing every syllable, imagining coworkers secretly judging. They didn't even register it. Most people weren't really listening. They were preparing their own turn to speak. The all eyes on me phenomenon controls you by creating social anxiety out of thin air. It convinces you that visibility equals judgment, so you play small, avoid risk, and speak less, all to dodge attention that never actually existed. It makes authenticity feel dangerous, but the stage lights are imaginary. Here's a reframe. Think of 3 people you know, coworkers, friends, classmates. Can you recall 3 embarrassing moments from each of them? Probably not. And they can't recall yours either. Everyone's spotlight is pointed inward. The freedom begins when you realize you're not performing. You're just existing. And that's enough. Habit 14. Implicit egotism. You meet someone new and instantly feel comfortable. You tell yourself it's chemistry, a mysterious click. But often, it's not chemistry. It's you, disguised as someone else. Implicit egotism is your unconscious attraction to familiarity. You feel drawn to people who subtly resemble you in looks, name, humor, background, or worldview, because your brain confuses similar with safe. It's a self-love feedback loop dressed up as connection. The ventromedial prefrontal cortex, a region that processes reward and emotional value, assigns positive meaning to familiar stimuli. It's the same mechanism that makes your favorite song feel good. Your brain recognizes the pattern and relaxes. Familiarity equals fluency. Fluency equals comfort. Comfort feels like attraction. So you gravitate toward people who mirror you. You like the same music, grew up in similar neighborhoods, think in similar patterns. It feels deep, but it's just familiarity bias wearing a mask. You're not connecting with their uniqueness. You're reconnecting with your own reflection. Real life hides this everywhere. You find someone with a name that sounds like yours and inexplicably trust them more. You meet a colleague who shares your humor style, and they become your favorite. You're drawn to a romantic partner who carries traits you recognize from family dynamics. You call it fate. It's pattern recognition. The cost? Your world becomes a hall of mirrors. Every friendship, every belief system, every opinion starts circling back to you. You limit yourself to social duplicates, people who make you feel comfortable but rarely make you grow. You keep meeting versions of yourself and call it connection. Breaking this means intentionally expanding your comfort zone. Build one relationship with someone different, someone who doesn't laugh where you do, who challenges your assumptions. At first, it'll feel uncomfortable, even wrong. That's the point. Growth rarely feels familiar. When you feel resistance, that's your ego guarding its reflection. But when you stay open, you discover something richer. Connection not built on sameness, but understanding. And that kind of connection doesn't just mirror you, it transforms you. Habit 15. The mere exposure effect. You didn't like that person at first. They were just okay. But over time, after seeing them again and again, they somehow grew on you. It feels like you've gotten to know them. But more likely, your brain's just been trained to like them. Not because they changed, but because they're familiar. The mere exposure effect is one of the most powerful, invisible forces in your social life. It means the more often you're exposed to something, a face, a voice, a song, an idea, the more you like it, simply because it's familiar. Your brain confuses repetition with truth and familiarity with safety. In the orbitofrontal cortex, repeated stimuli are assigned positive value. The amygdala quiets its threat response the more it recognizes something. This evolutionary shortcut kept your ancestors safe. What's familiar is unlikely to be dangerous. But in the modern world, it makes you fall for people, jobs, and even ideas simply because they've lingered long enough in your environment. That song you used to hate? Now you hum it. That colleague you barely noticed? Suddenly, they seem interesting. That belief you once questioned? It now feels obviously true. You think you're forming opinions, but in many cases, exposure is forming them for you. It's why people get attached to toxic workplaces, why relationships survive long past their expiration date, why you keep defending old ideas that no longer serve you. Familiarity has disguised itself as loyalty, and that's how it controls you. It binds you to comfort through repetition. You stay not because it's right, but because it's known. You call it connection, but it's often just habit. Here's a simple test. Take distance. Step back from that person, job, or idea. Ask yourself, do I actually miss this, or do I just miss the routine of it? If the longing fades quickly, it wasn't love, it was mere exposure. If it deepens with distance, that's real. Familiarity breeds affection, but it also breeds illusion. The courage lies in walking away long enough to see which one you're living in. Habit 16. Selective attention. A group of people pass a basketball. You're asked to count the passes. You focus carefully, eyes locked. At the end, you're asked, did you see the gorilla? Half the people didn't. A person in a full gorilla suit walked right through the scene, and their brains literally didn't register it. That's selective attention. Your brain's way of protecting you from overload by filtering out 99.999% of what's happening around you. You're not seeing reality. You're seeing what your attention allows in. The thalamus acts as a gatekeeper, deciding what sensory data passes through to consciousness. Out of roughly 11 million bits of sensory input per second, your conscious mind handles only about 110 bits. That's the bandwidth of your reality. Everything else, all the beauty, danger, opportunity, and nuance, gets deleted. Attention is not a camera. It's a spotlight. And whatever it points at becomes your world. In daily life, this plays out constantly. You're in a conversation, but instead of listening, you're mentally rehearsing your next sentence, so you miss the emotional truth of what's being said. You're so focused on problems that you don't see the opportunities sitting beside them. You scroll through your phone and miss the quiet sadness in your friend's face. Your attention sculpts your reality, and whatever you ignore effectively doesn't exist. This is why two people can live the same moment and experience two completely different worlds. One sees rejection, another sees redirection. One sees failure, another sees feedback. The world didn't change, their attention did. The danger is that attention builds confirmation loops. You expect failure, so you notice evidence of it everywhere. You expect kindness, so you find it. Whatever your spotlight seeks, your brain supplies. To break free, you need to retrain the spotlight. Ask yourself daily, what am I not noticing? Then look deliberately. In your room, your work, your relationships, find something you've never noticed before. You'll realize that reality isn't fixed, it's fluid. It expands or contracts based on where you aim your awareness. Most of your blind spots aren't hidden, they're just unlit. The gorilla in the experiment was never invisible. You just weren't looking. Habit 17. The imposter syndrome loop. You succeeded, but you know you didn't deserve it. Anyone who gets to know you will realize you're not actually qualified. This feeling is so real that you've shaped your entire life around it, without realizing it. Despite all the evidence of competence, you keep believing your success was a fluke. You convince yourself that luck, timing, or other people's generosity made it happen, not your skill. And every time something goes well, your brain whispers, "This time was lucky. Next time, they'll see the truth." Your prefrontal cortex sets impossibly high standards, comparing your actual achievements to an idealized version that no one could reach. When you do succeed, you instantly explain it away. I just worked hard. They were being nice. Anyone could have done that. But when you fail, you absorb it fully, as proof that you never deserved the success in the first place. The amygdala interprets visibility, praise, recognition, leadership as threat, because being seen feels dangerous when you secretly believe you don't belong. And the brain's pattern recognition system amplifies mistakes. It stores every error as evidence that your achievements were accidents. You got the promotion, but you tell yourself it was timing. Someone complimented your work, but you think they're just being polite. You achieve something major, but it feels like a clerical error in the universe. The result, a lifelong cycle of hiding behind competence, working twice as hard to prove what you already proved and still never believing it's enough. You choose roles that feel safe, where you're clearly qualified, so you never risk being exposed. You avoid taking bigger chances because you assume the next one will reveal the fraud. You undermine yourself in subtle ways, over-preparing, underpricing, staying small. To break it, you have to update the self-image your success never reached. Write down one clear success, something real. Describe exactly what you did that caused it, what skill or decision made it possible. When your mind says, "That was luck," read your evidence aloud. Repeat it until your brain learns a new association. Competence creates success. Over time, the fraud story weakens. Repetition rewires the loop. Habit 18. The perfectionist sabotage excellence as prison. You set a standard so high it's nearly impossible to meet. When you don't meet it, you feel like a failure. So you don't start. Which, of course, guarantees failure. But now the failure is about not trying, not about not being perfect. Perfectionism looks like ambition, but underneath it's fear. A fear that anything less than flawless will expose you. The anterior cingulate cortex is constantly scanning for errors, lighting up at the smallest imperfection. Every misstep feels like danger, every flaw like proof of inadequacy. The amygdala preloads shame before anyone else can judge you, so you judge yourself first. Perfectionism is often born in childhood, when approval or safety depended on performance. You learned that being perfect earned love or protection, and now, as an adult, that survival mechanism still runs your life. You procrastinate not because you're lazy, but because starting means facing the impossible standard. You want to start writing, but the first sentence must be brilliant, so you don't write. You want to get fit, but the plan must be perfect, so you delay until conditions are ideal. You dream of launching something new, but the risk of imperfection feels unbearable, so you stay dreaming. This pattern traps you in potential. The perfect version in your head is untouchable, while the real version in the world feels shameful. So you never release it. Perfectionism kills momentum, contribution, and creativity. You become the person who's always about to do something incredible, but never actually does. The antidote isn't aiming lower, it's aiming smaller. Set a standard so low it's laughable. Version 1 will be bad. Give yourself permission to make the worst possible attempt. Because once it exists, it can be improved. Every great creation began as something imperfect. Excellence is built, not born. You can't polish something that doesn't exist. Habit 19. The novice overestimation. The moment you start learning something, you feel certain you understand it. That false confidence is comforting. It feels like mastery. But it also stops you from going deeper. At the beginning of any skill, your brain maps simple patterns and assumes that's the whole terrain. Because you've learned something, you mistake familiarity for understanding. Your prefrontal cortex hasn't yet realized how vast the field is, so you overestimate your grasp. That's why beginners are so confident, and why experts are so cautious. True expertise brings humility. The more you know, the more you realize how much you don't. But most people never get that far, because the confidence bubble bursts before real learning begins. When the illusion of mastery collapses, it feels like failure. The ego retreats. The learning stops. You read a few articles on investing and start giving advice. You've been to the gym for a month and think you understand training science. You take one online course and believe you could teach it better. Then reality hits. The complexity overwhelms you, and you quit. just when actual understanding was about to start forming. This effect keeps people frozen between arrogance and insecurity. You either overestimate your ability or give up when you finally see how little you knew. Both stop growth. The key is to recognize the valley. It's that painful moment when your confidence drops and you start doubting yourself. Most people interpret that dip as a sign they're bad at something. It's actually proof you're progressing. You've moved past illusion and are now encountering truth. When you hit that valley, stay there. Commit to 90 days of deliberate learning after your confidence crashes. That's where real competence forms. True mastery always starts with the humility to realize you're not there yet. Habit 20. The spotlight effect and self-criticism. You made a mistake, and you're convinced everyone noticed. You replay it, dissect it, feel the heat of shame every time you remember. You imagine people judging you, whispering, remembering. But they're not. They've already moved on. You're the only one still watching the replay. The spotlight effect tricks you into believing your errors are the center of everyone's attention. Add self-criticism to that, and every small mistake becomes a personal indictment. Your amygdala treats it like a threat to survival, shame, exposure, rejection. The prefrontal cortex can't separate "I made a mistake" from "I am a mistake." That's why you spiral. Rumination traps the mistake in working memory, playing it over and over until it becomes identity. The same brain regions that process physical pain activate when you feel deep social embarrassment. You're literally hurting yourself with your own thoughts. You spill coffee, stutter during a presentation, say something awkward. In your mind, it's catastrophic. To others, it's a non-event. But you internalize it. Your self-worth shrinking around a moment no one else remembers. This hyper-self-focus makes you risk-averse. You avoid visibility, creativity, and vulnerability because they carry the possibility of error. You can't grow when the cost of imperfection feels like humiliation. The truth is, no one's keeping score but you. Most people are too absorbed in their own internal monologue to notice your slip-ups. You think the world's a mirror. It's a series of spotlights, each person standing under their own. When you catch yourself spiraling in self-criticism, pause. Ask, would I say this to a friend? Almost certainly not. You'd offer understanding, not attack. Apply the same tone to yourself. Not as an act of indulgence, but fairness. The same fairness you already extend to everyone else. That shift, treating yourself as human, breaks the loop of invisible self-punishment. Habit 21. The learned helplessness loop. You've tried before. It didn't work. So now, you don't even try. You tell yourself it's realism. But underneath, it's conditioning. Learned helplessness forms when repeated effort produces no control. The brain learns a rule. My actions don't matter. Once that rule sets in, you stop testing reality. You stop trying new strategies. You stop believing agency exists. It's a psychological scar that looks like apathy. In experiments, animals exposed to unavoidable shocks eventually stopped trying to escape, even when the door was left open. Their nervous systems had encoded futility. Humans do the same. You fail enough times, at business, love, self-improvement, and a part of you stops believing effort changes anything. The amygdala signals defeat before action begins. Dopamine motivation circuits quiet down. The comfort of an action becomes its own logic. Why try? I already know what will happen. You start mistaking predictability for safety. You stay in jobs that drain you, relationships that diminish you, habits that dull you, because at least they're familiar. Unknown pain feels worse than known pain. But learned helplessness isn't truth, it's memory. You're still capable of change. The map just got frozen at the moment of disappointment. To break it, you have to retrain agency in microdoses. Choose one small, controllable action every day, something you can complete and notice the result of. Cook a meal. Organize a drawer. Send an email. Every time you see a cause-effect connection, you rewire belief. My actions matter. Recovery from helplessness doesn't come from motivation. It comes from evidence. Small wins restore the brain's sense of control. Over time, your nervous system learns the new rule: effort works. Habit 22. The fear of success. Failure feels safe because it's familiar. Success threatens to change everything: your relationships, your identity, your responsibilities. So your subconscious finds ways to avoid it, ways that feel like you're trying, but secretly protect you from the danger of winning. The fear of success isn't about laziness or lack of ambition. It's about safety. Success requires exposure. It forces you to evolve. It threatens the comfort of being unseen. The brain's amygdala doesn't distinguish between physical danger and psychological change. It just detects uncertainty. And success, by definition, is uncertain. It demands you enter territory you've never navigated before. So when opportunity appears, your survival system triggers the same neural alarms that would sound in the face of danger. Your pulse quickens, your thoughts scatter, and subtle avoidance patterns kick in. Suddenly, procrastination feels justified, doubts feel logical, and every reason to delay feels intelligent. But beneath that logic lies one emotion: fear. This fear often roots in attachment trauma. If success once meant losing connection, outgrowing people you love, being resented, or punished for standing out, then your subconscious learns that visibility equals abandonment. So when progress approaches, your nervous system does what it's trained to do: protect you from separation by keeping you small. Then there's identity protection. If you've built your sense of self around struggle, being the underdog, the fighter, the one who almost made it, then success feels like erasure. Who are you without the uphill climb? Winning means rewriting your identity script, and that's disorienting. Learned helplessness adds another layer. If, deep down, you've internalized the idea that people like me don't succeed, then success itself becomes a threat to your worldview. Your subconscious prefers familiar pain over unfamiliar joy, because at least the pain feels predictable. You see this play out in small, invisible acts of sabotage. You're on the verge of closing a business deal, and suddenly make an impulsive decision that collapses it. You're about to get the relationship you always wanted, and you start creating conflict, convincing yourself it won't work. You finally get the promotion, and then prove to everyone, including yourself, that you weren't ready. None of it feels intentional. It's your subconscious trying to return you to equilibrium. The fear of success keeps you trapped under an invisible ceiling, not too low to despair, but never high enough to transform. You dream big, but move cautiously, because progress feels threatening, not exciting. It's why so many people hover at almost there for years. Success isn't blocked by lack of talent. It's blocked by emotional resistance to what success demands. So before your next breakthrough, visualize what success would actually change. How would your routine shift? How would people treat you differently? What responsibilities would expand? Then ask yourself honestly, which of those changes frightens me most? That fear is the real obstacle, not the external challenges, but the internal resistance to the transformation success requires. Name that fear. Grieve what you'll lose: the comfort of struggle, the predictability of failure, the safety of being unseen. Then move forward anyway. Because success doesn't destroy safety, it redefines it. Habit 23. Negative self-fulfilling prophecies. You believe you're socially awkward, so you act awkward, so people respond awkwardly, and your belief is confirmed. You created the exact future you feared, not because it was inevitable, but because your belief shaped your behavior, and your behavior shaped reality. This is the invisible machinery of a self-fulfilling prophecy. A negative belief about yourself doesn't just predict your behavior, it produces it. Once your subconscious accepts an idea as truth, your body language, tone, and decisions unconsciously align with it. Then the world mirrors that belief back to you, proving you right. It begins with confirmation bias. When you believe something negative about yourself, your mind filters reality to support it. You ignore data that contradicts it and magnify anything that validates it. You think you're unlikable, so you interpret neutral expressions as rejection. You think you're bad at conversations, so you notice every pause as proof. Then comes behavioral congruence. Your belief quietly scripts your body's performance. If you think you're awkward, your posture tightens, your voice hesitates, your gaze avoids. The other person senses that tension, and the interaction becomes strained. Exactly what you feared. The expectancy effect seals the loop. Others unconsciously pick up on your internal narrative. If you expect rejection, you project subtle signals of withdrawal. If you expect failure, you emit resignation. Humans are wired to mirror emotional cues, so the world delivers what your belief broadcasts. You see it everywhere. You believe you're not creative, so you never try creative work, and the absence of output proves it. You believe you're bad at networking, so you avoid events, and your small social circle confirms your story. You believe no one will love you, so you stop showing warmth, and people withdraw, completing the prophecy. This mechanism controls you by collapsing possibility into certainty. You don't test new realities because your current one feels conclusive. The prophecy replaces exploration with evidence collection. You're not looking for what's true, only for what confirms the script. That's how people stay stuck even as circumstances improve. They move to better jobs, healthier relationships, new cities, and still recreate the same outcomes. Because it's not the environment that maintains the pattern, it's the belief manufacturing the environment's response. So here's the experiment. Choose one limiting belief about yourself. For the next 7 days, act as if the opposite were true, not to think positive, but to test the mechanism. If you believe you're uncharismatic, act as if you are charismatic. If you believe you're unlucky, act as if opportunities are watching. Don't wait for belief, lead with behavior. You'll notice the world starts responding differently, because the prophecy was never predictive. It was generative. Habit 24. Defensive pessimism. You imagine the worst possible outcome before anything happens. You think this prepares you. Actually, it's sabotaging you, and your brain has convinced you it's wisdom. Defensive pessimism masquerades as maturity. You tell yourself you're just being realistic. But beneath that realism lies anxiety dressed as logic. The brain's amygdala runs constant simulations of threat to keep you safe. It believes rehearsing pain makes it less painful. The problem is, your nervous system doesn't distinguish imagination from experience. It reacts to both the same way. So when you mentally live through failure in advance, your body records it as real. You feel the defeat, the embarrassment, the hopelessness, without the event ever happening. By the time you act, you're already emotionally depleted. You're protecting yourself from disappointment by feeling it preemptively. This creates rumination loops. You replay every worst-case scenario, convincing yourself it's preparation. But this rehearsal drains focus and erodes confidence. The more you imagine failing, the less motivation you have to try, because your brain has already learned that the outcome is doomed. In behavior, it looks like this. Before a presentation, you assume it'll go terribly, so you prepare half-heartedly, ensuring a mediocre result. Before a date, you expect rejection, so you act guarded and cold, making connection impossible. Before applying for a job, you decide you won't get it, so your interview energy says exactly that. You call it self-protection, but it's quiet self-sabotage. Defensive pessimism disguises itself as intelligence. You think you're outsmarting disappointment, but really, you're rehearsing defeat. The brain rewards this loop because it feels safe. Predictable pain beats unpredictable possibility. That's why chronic pessimists rarely improve their outcomes. They're not seeing the future accurately, they're constructing it. Habit 25. Measuring yourself against others. You're comparing your internal experience, every doubt, insecurity, and unfinished story, to someone else's highlight reel. No wonder you feel inadequate. The comparison trap hijacks one of humanity's oldest instincts, social evaluation. In tribal environments, comparison kept you safe. It helped you know where you stood. But in a digital world, that ancient mechanism is constantly overstimulated. The brain evolved for small groups. It can't process thousands of curated lives at once without distorting self-perception. When you scroll or observe others, you're seeing their filtered outputs, success posts, confident smiles, edited photos. What you don't see are their private failures, indecisions, or nights of doubt. Yet your brain compares your behind-the-scenes footage to their premiere performance and concludes you're losing. This illusion is powered by asymmetric information. You know your full spectrum, the confusion, the compromises, the days you barely held it together. But you only see fragments of others, their peaks, never their plateaus. And because the human mind gives more weight to visible data, your brain interprets their highlight as their whole life. The more you compare, the more your dopamine system desynchronizes. Each exposure to someone doing better spikes and then crashes your reward circuit, creating micro hits of inadequacy. It's not just emotional, it's neurochemical withdrawal. You become addicted to the very platforms that make you feel inferior. This pattern silently dictates choices. You start shaping goals not from intrinsic desire, but from competitive mimicry. You buy what they buy, chase what they chase, and neglect what actually fulfills you. You mistake imitation for ambition. Over time, it corrodes satisfaction. You could be thriving by objective measures, yet feel like you're behind, because your internal scoreboard is calibrated to someone else's life. You stop noticing progress, because someone always appears ahead. Here's the correction. For 1 week, observe when you compare. Don't fight it, just track it. Who triggers it? What situations amplify it? Then redirect comparison inward. Compare your current self to who you were 6 months ago. Are you thinking more clearly? Handling stress better? Expressing yourself with more confidence? That's growth. Because external comparison measures illusion. Internal comparison measures evolution. Habit 26. The false memory effect. You have vivid memories of things that didn't happen the way you remember them. You're not lying. You're misremembering. And you're absolutely certain you're right. Memory feels like playback, but it's reconstruction. Every time you recall, you rebuild. Your hippocampus doesn't store film reels. It stores fragments, schemas, and associations. When you recall an event, your brain pulls these fragments from multiple networks and stitches them into what feels like a single, continuous experience. But the stitching process adds, removes, and reshapes details each time. That's why the memory of your last birthday isn't the same one you had a year ago. It's been edited. New information, conversations, and emotions have bled into it. The same mechanism that helps you make sense of the past also distorts it. Source monitoring errors amplify this distortion. You remember a detail but forget where it came from. Did you experience it, dream it, or hear it? Your brain doesn't tag that metadata clearly. When later asked, it retrieves the content but not the source, and confidence fills the gap. You feel certain because the emotional and sensory vividness is real, even if the factual content isn't. Then comes the misinformation effect. When new information is introduced after an event, through stories, photos, or repetition, it becomes integrated into the original memory. The hippocampus treats updates as authentic fragments, merging them with what was stored. Over time, the new version replaces the original. Real life is full of these illusions. You recall an argument and are sure you said something specific, but everyone else remembers it differently. You believe your childhood had a certain tone, more painful, more peaceful, but later evidence contradicts your story. You're certain you told someone your plans, yet they never heard them. Sometimes you even remember deciding something that you only imagined doing. This illusion quietly governs relationships and decisions. You trust your recollections as factual evidence, even when they're reconstructions. You argue from conviction rather than accuracy. Two people can remember the same event with complete certainty, yet tell entirely different stories, and both feel truthful, because confidence and accuracy are independent. Your brain edits your history to preserve coherence, not truth. It makes the story consistent with who you are now. And when identity changes, memory rewrites to match. So, when a memory feels defining, document it. Write it down soon after it happens. Months later, revisit it. You'll notice the differences. Words changed, tones softened or sharpened, sequences rearranged. It's not failure. It's the fluid nature of recollection. Holding your memories lightly is the only way to stay grounded in reality. Habit 27. Source amnesia. You know something is true, but you have no idea where you learned it. Maybe from a credible expert. Maybe from a meme. Maybe from a dream. Yet you carry it as fact. This is source amnesia, the tendency to retain information but lose track of where it came from. The content remains intact, the context erodes. The prefrontal cortex separates semantic memory, the fact itself, from episodic memory, the source. Over time, the source fades faster than the fact, leaving you with unanchored knowledge. When the source disappears, your mind fills the void with plausibility. If the fact feels familiar, your brain assumes it must be true. If it feels emotionally resonant, it's treated as credible. That's why a line you read in a tweet can later feel like something you learned in a book. The mechanism is efficient but dangerous. Our ancestors needed to remember useful information, where food was found, which plants were poisonous, without always remembering who said it. But in an age of misinformation, this shortcut backfires. The brain now treats gossip, jokes, or headlines as equal to data because it can't trace the source. Think about the last time you repeated a statistic. You were confident in it. But when asked, "Where did you hear that?" you couldn't say. Was it a podcast? A friend? A post? Maybe it wasn't true at all. Or recall a belief about someone, something you heard once. You remember the content, but not whether the source was trustworthy. And because the content stuck, it now feels factual. This phenomenon explains why false information spreads so easily. The brain decouples content from origin, and confidence fills the vacuum. You live by unexamined truths about politics, health, relationships, whose provenance has vanished. Even when new evidence arises, you struggle to update your beliefs because you no longer know what they're rooted in. So, when a belief feels deeply certain, pause and trace it. Where did this idea come from? Can you identify the original voice, study, or event? If not, treat it as possibly true, but unverified. This small act, relinking memory to source, protects you from epistemic illusion. Most dogmatic certainty dissolves the moment you realize you don't know where the fact came from. Habit 28. The primacy effect. The first thing you learned about something shaped your understanding more than anything that followed. Even when it was wrong. Even when you know better now. Your brain gives disproportionate weight to first impressions because early information anchors understanding. When the mind encounters something new, the hippocampus encodes it deeply, elaborating on it, connecting it to prior schemas. This early encoding becomes the framework through which all later data is filtered. Subsequent information must pass through that first lens. If it aligns, it's accepted easily. If it contradicts, it encounters friction. Your neural networks resist restructuring. The brain would rather preserve coherence than update truth. That's why first teachers, first impressions, and first experiences wield so much power. You meet someone under stress, they're curt, and your mind stores them as cold. Years later, even after warmth and kindness, that early tag still colors perception. You learned a concept incorrectly as a child. Later explanations never fully override it. You visited a city and had a bad first day. Every return feels tinted by that emotional residue. The primacy effect also explains why misinformation is hard to correct. Once a false narrative is learned first, accurate corrections never fully erase it. The original still echoes beneath awareness, shaping emotional responses. This cognitive inertia creates invisible rigidity. It's why changing your mind feels uncomfortable. It's not just psychological, it's neurological. Reconsolidating memory requires dismantling the initial encoding, and the brain resists that disruption. So, much of what you believe today might still be the first version you ever encountered. The first interpretation of a friend's action. The first rumor about a public figure. The first narrative about who you are. The next time you feel unshakably certain about something, ask yourself, what's my earliest memory of learning this? Is that source still valid? You may find your current worldview anchored to outdated data. Letting go of the first imprint doesn't mean betrayal. It means intellectual evolution. Habit 29. The bias of sequence. In any list of moments, tasks, memories, experiences, you remember the beginning and the end vividly. The middle fades into fog. Your mind processes reality in biased order, and you don't even notice. The serial position effect is your brain's attention biased toward edges. The first item in a sequence benefits from primacy. It's rehearsed more, encoded deeper. The last item benefits from recency. It lingers in working memory. The middle is statistically neglected, absorbed without elaboration. This isn't just about lists. It shapes perception of time, performance, and relationships. You remember the start of a conversation and the parting words, but the nuanced middle, the laughter, hesitation, subtle warmth, slips away. In a movie, you recall the opening scene and the finale, while the heart of the story blurs. Even in relationships, you romanticize the beginning and dramatize the end, forgetting the ordinary years in between. In professional settings, it's even more consequential. In interviews, first impressions dominate and final remarks seal the outcome. The middle of the discussion, where most information resides, barely registers. In projects, the initial excitement and final sprint overshadow the long, steady middle where the real progress happens. Your attention system is linear but biased. It creates a distorted sense of what mattered. The opening feels defining. The ending feels conclusive. The middle feels like filler, even when it's where the essence lives. That's why people misjudge relationships, careers, and life phases. You recall how things began and how they ended, and forget how they mostly were. The human story isn't written in beginnings or endings. It's written in the middle chapters we forget to notice. To rebalance perception, practice deliberate recall. When assessing something, a relationship, a decision, a goal, focus on the midphase. What was the consistent pattern between the excitement of the start and the urgency of the end? That's the truth of the experience. Your memory is a biased storyteller. It gives you highlights, not full narratives. Recognizing that bias doesn't make memory weaker. It makes awareness stronger. Habit 30. Inattentional blindness. There's significant information in your environment right now that you're completely blind to. Not because you can't see, but because you're not expecting it. This is what happens when attention becomes a tunnel. Your brain filters reality so aggressively that anything outside your current focus may as well not exist. You could look straight at something, yet never truly see it. Your brain runs on an attentional bottleneck. The thalamus acts as a gatekeeper, deciding which bits of sensory data are allowed to pass into conscious awareness. Most of what your eyes, ears, and skin detect never reaches your consciousness at all. You're not built to process everything. You're built to survive by focusing only on what seems relevant. And relevance is dictated not by truth, but by expectation. You see what you're looking for. That's why magicians can make coins disappear in plain sight. They're not faster than your eyes. They're faster than your expectations. It's why, during a heated conversation, you miss the subtle cues that someone's trying to connect because you're busy crafting your next line. While your mind's spotlight is fixed on one task, the rest of the stage goes dark. In everyday life, this means you miss the world's quiet signals, the opportunities, the warnings, the small shifts that could change everything. You don't notice kindness when you're scanning for betrayal. You don't see possibilities when your attention is trained on threats. You can literally live inside a narrowed slice of the world, mistaking it for the whole. To loosen the grip, pause and ask yourself, what am I not looking for right now? That question widens the aperture. Spend a few seconds scanning the periphery, physical, emotional, conversational. You'll start noticing what's been hiding in plain sight. The mind that sees only what it expects is predictable. The one that questions its focus begins to see the unseen. Habit 31. The peak end rule. You're not remembering how long something was or how it felt overall. You're remembering the most intense moment and how it ended. That's what shapes your memory and your future choices. This is the peak end rule. The brain doesn't store the total duration of experiences. It compresses them into emotional snapshots. The amygdala captures the highs and lows, the peaks, while the recency bias locks in the ending. The rest blurs into noise. You could have 10 calm, pleasant hours and 5 miserable minutes, and your memory will tag the whole experience as bad. That's why a relationship filled mostly with warmth can be rewritten by a single betrayal. Why a decent job becomes a nightmare because of how it ended. Why a vacation becomes amazing because of one perfect sunset even if the rest was ordinary. You don't remember reality. You remember your brain's edited highlight reel. This habit silently directs your future. You choose experiences not for their consistent value, but for their emotional peaks. You avoid repeating things that ended badly, even if they were mostly good. You chase excitement over stability, because the brain equates intensity with meaning. And when decisions are based on memory, not truth, your life becomes steered by distortions. Next time you're judging an experience, filter out the extreme moments. Ignore the best and worst, and look at the middle 80%. How was it, really, most of the time? That's the truth your memory hides. The goal isn't to erase emotion. It's to recognize that your memories are less about what happened and more about what felt unforgettable. Habit 32. Source credibility bias. You'll believe the same statement from an expert that you dismiss from a stranger. But you won't realize it's the source, not the statement, that changed your mind. This bias runs deep. Your orbitofrontal cortex tags every piece of information with a credibility score. When a claim comes from someone perceived as competent or familiar, the brain lowers its guard. You don't evaluate the content. You evaluate the person. It's efficient, but dangerous. You hear a nutrition fact from a doctor and accept it instantly. The same fact from a random YouTuber feels questionable, even if it's correct. You accept a political claim from your preferred news outlet, but scoff when it comes from the opposing one. You trust your friend's advice, even when it's identical to what a stranger said earlier. This habit shapes your worldview. It makes you outsource thinking to credibility signals, titles, appearances, authority cues. It keeps you comfortable inside echo chambers, where familiar voices feel safer than conflicting truths. It allows manipulation through status and presentation. You believe, not because something is true, but because it feels true coming from the right person. When you encounter a claim that feels convincing, strip away the source for a moment. Ask, if I didn't know who said this, would it still make sense? Then reintroduce the source. Notice how your certainty changes. The most intelligent people aren't those who trust experts blindly, but those who can separate truth from the charisma delivering it. Habit 33. Cryptoamnesia. You had a new idea that suddenly felt brilliant because you'd heard it before. Your brain just forgot where. Cryptoamnesia happens when your mind recycles old information and presents it as original thought. This isn't deception, it's the way memory works. Implicit memory stores knowledge without tagging it with a source. Over time, you forget where something came from but retain the content itself. When that information resurfaces, it feels spontaneous. You mistake recognition for invention. Writers, musicians, inventors all fall victim to it. You might sketch a melody that feels inspired, only to realize it mirrors a song you heard years ago. You might give advice you're sure came from your own insight, but it was something your mentor once said. Even your opinions, your core beliefs, may be internalized fragments of others' voices, recycled so long they sound like your own. This habit subtly inflates your sense of originality. It convinces you you're creating when you're actually remembering. It's not malicious, it's the mind's way of economizing. But it can also trap you in cycles of unacknowledged influence, mistaking echo for authenticity. When inspiration strikes, pause and ask, where have I felt this before? If no source appears, don't assume it's yours. Assume it's integrated. That awareness turns unconscious imitation into conscious synthesis. True creativity isn't inventing from nothing. It's remembering wisely. Habit 34. The negativity bias. One criticism outweighs 10 compliments. One threat outweighs 10 opportunities. Your brain isn't broken. It's doing exactly what evolution trained it to do. Prioritize survival over happiness. Long before civilization, missing a threat could mean death, while missing an opportunity only meant hunger. The human nervous system learned to err on the side of caution, and that ancient algorithm still runs in your head today. The amygdala fires faster and louder for negative information. It reacts before you have time to think, pumping your body with stress hormones that heighten alertness. Negative experiences are encoded more deeply and recalled more vividly because they once kept your ancestors alive. You don't remember the 100 times nothing bad happened. You remember the one time danger did. This is why, after a day filled with small wins, you fixate on the awkward moment. Why you ruminate on the one critique instead of the many praises. Why, even in safety, you feel uneasy. Your brain interprets comfort as complacency and searches for something, anything, to worry about. The result is a quiet, constant hum of dissatisfaction, a sense that things could go wrong, even when they're not. This bias doesn't just skew your perception, it reshapes your reality. You start expecting disappointment, so you interpret neutrality as negative. You brace for conflict, so you find it where it doesn't exist. You can't delete the bias, but you can counterbalance it. For every negative thing your mind highlights, consciously name 3 positive ones. Not as blind optimism, but as corrective accounting. You're not ignoring the danger, you're restoring proportion. Your nervous system evolved for survival. Awareness is how you evolve it for peace. Habit 35. Emotion regulation through avoidance. You feel something uncomfortable, so you distract yourself. It works. The feeling goes away, so you do it again and again. Except the emotion isn't gone. It's just waiting, stored quietly in your body. Avoidance is emotional first aid that never heals the wound. When you scroll, drink, overwork, or stay busy to escape discomfort, your brain rewards you. The emotion fades temporarily, reinforcing the avoidance. But beneath the relief, your amygdala stays active, your body stays tense, and your nervous system stays unprocessed. You haven't resolved the feeling, you've just postponed it. Every time you avoid, the emotion loops. Anxiety returns. Loneliness deepens. Shame hides, then reappears stronger. Because emotions are messages. If you don't listen, they repeat themselves. Avoidance keeps the nervous system slightly dysregulated, like a background hum of static that never turns off. You might feel fine for days, but small triggers flood the system again, because the stored emotion was never metabolized. Real peace doesn't come from escaping your feelings, it comes from allowing them. Name one emotion you habitually avoid. Anxiety, anger, grief. Then sit with it for 2 minutes without distraction. Feel where it lives in your body, your chest, throat, stomach. Breathe into that space. You'll notice it moves, changes, softens. That's processing. Most emotions dissolve within minutes when faced directly. Avoidance is what keeps them alive. Habit 36. Absorbing others' nervous systems. Someone walks into the room upset, and suddenly you're upset. Not because you did anything wrong, but because your mirror neurons synchronized with their emotional state. Your body copied their distress before your mind even registered it. We like to think emotions are private, but they're contagious. Your nervous system is a social organ, constantly tuning itself to others through microsignals, posture, tone, breathing, eye movement. When someone's anxious, your insulin mirrors their tension. When they're calm, your body mirrors that too. Regulation and dysregulation spread like currents through invisible channels. That's why you can walk into a tense meeting and immediately feel on edge. Why one person's panic can ripple through a crowd. Why scrolling through outrage online leaves you exhausted. You're not just consuming information, you're absorbing nervous systems. This is how connection works, but it's also how emotional exhaustion builds. If you're constantly around anxious, angry, or pessimistic people, your body spends its energy trying to stabilize them. And if you don't know it's happening, you'll think the tension is yours. Notice who regulates you and who dysregulates you. The friend whose presence slows your breathing, that's regulation. The one whose chaos speeds your pulse, that's contagion. This isn't about cutting people off, it's about nervous system hygiene. Protect your calm like oxygen. You can't co-regulate others if you've absorbed their storm. Regulate yourself first, then offer stability, not sympathy that sinks you both. Habit 37. The flinch response. Something triggers you, a tone, a glance, a phrase, and before thought, your body flinches. Your muscles tighten, your breath shortens, your heart rate spikes. The conscious mind hasn't even arrived yet. The reaction is already complete. This is your nervous system's primitive defense, an echo of the past masquerading as the present. The amygdala detects perceived threat faster than your prefrontal cortex can reason. It fires before logic, summoning fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. That's why you can know better and still react poorly. You're not responding to what's happening. You're responding to what used to happen. A raised voice pulls up old memories of criticism, and you shut down. A request for feedback recalls past failure, and you grow defensive. A familiar expression reminds your body of danger, and you retreat. The event isn't dangerous, but your nervous system doesn't know that. It's trained by association, not truth. Every unhealed memory is a silent teacher controlling your present. The flinch is its lesson, repeated until understood. To unlearn it, you must slow down enough to catch it. The next time you feel that contraction, don't fight it. Pause, just for 3 seconds. Notice your body's signal and ask, am I reacting to now or to then? That question reconnects your prefrontal cortex, reintroducing choice into a reflex. You won't stop flinching overnight, but each pause weakens the old pattern. Over time, your body learns safety where it once expected pain. That's emotional evolution, not suppression, not denial, just the nervous system remembering that not every shadow means danger anymore. Habit 38. Mood-Congruent memory. When you're sad, you suddenly remember all the times you failed. When you're happy, you remember successes. You're not discovering new truths about yourself. You're remembering selectively based on your current mood. Your emotional state isn't just coloring your memories. It's choosing which ones you even have access to. When you're in a negative mood, your brain retrieves experiences that match that tone. Failures, losses, rejections. The amygdala tags those memories with emotional intensity, and when your current state resonates with that same emotional frequency, they surface first. It's not that you've suddenly become less capable or more broken. It's that the emotional context has changed, and your memory system obeys the context, not the logic. Your brain uses mood as a context cue. When you feel low, it filters for similar memories, moments when you also felt low. The pattern strengthens itself. A sad mood retrieves sad memories, and those memories deepen the sadness, which then retrieves even more sad memories. It's a psychological spiral, and it feels like reality tightening around you. You felt it before. You wake up on a bad day, you spill coffee, miss a message, someone doesn't text back. By afternoon, your mind has constructed a narrative. Everything always goes wrong for me. That story feels like truth, but it's actually state-dependent memory at work. The same brain, in a calm state, could recall a dozen counterexamples. Times you handled things well, times people showed up for you. But you can't access those now, because your emotional state has changed the search query. It's why depression feels like amnesia for hope, and joy feels like selective memory for everything that's ever gone right. You're living in the same life, but your access to evidence changes with your mood. When you understand this, you start questioning the conclusions your mind makes in moments of despair. Maybe you're not unlovable, unsuccessful, or always left out. Maybe you're just tuned to the wrong emotional frequency for accurate memory retrieval. So here's the practice. When you feel certain about something painful, I'll never get better, nothing ever works out, write it down. Then wait. When your mood shifts, revisit it. Read what your past self believed with the clarity of a different state. You'll notice how temporary those truths really were. Mood is not the mirror of your life, it's the lens. And the lens keeps changing. Habit 39. Rumination. You think you're solving the problem by replaying it over and over. Actually, you're just rehearsing suffering. Your brain mistakes rumination for problem solving. The more you think, the worse you feel, and the worse you feel, the more you think. Rumination begins as an attempt at control. Your mind detects discomfort and tries to analyze it away. The anterior cingulate cortex flags something as unresolved, and the default mode network takes over, looping through the same thoughts to keep it active. But it's not progress, it's a neural feedback loop. Your body is flooded with cortisol, your heart rate slightly elevated, your muscles tense. Every replay strengthens the emotional memory instead of resolving it. After an awkward interaction, you keep replaying what you should have said. It feels like you're preparing for the next time, but you're not. You're deepening the groove of humiliation. After a breakup, you go through the text again and again, hoping to extract meaning. But meaning doesn't come from analysis. It comes from processing. Rumination keeps you trapped in the past while convincing you that you're doing something useful. It's the illusion of productivity, thinking without forward motion. And because it's emotionally charged, your brain rewards it with a faint sense of control, the same way scratching a wound feels like relief but delays healing. It controls you by stealing mental energy that could be used for real solutions. You feel tired but unsatisfied, mentally busy but emotionally frozen. You confuse motion for progress. You confuse rehearsal for healing. To break it, you have to interrupt the neurological rhythm. The next time you catch yourself looping, don't fight the thoughts, time them. Set a 5-minute timer. For those minutes, ruminate as hard as you can. When it goes off, deliberately stand, move, do something sensory, cold water, a walk, a deep breath. This breaks the feedback loop and returns the brain to external orientation. Over time, this simple pattern teaches your brain that rumination is not survival, it's repetition. And once your mind realizes the loop doesn't lead to safety, it begins to loosen its grip. Thinking stops feeling like drowning. It becomes deliberate again. Habit 40. Emotional suppression. You tried to just not think about it. But suppressing the emotion required continuous effort, and now you're exhausted from holding it down. The emotion is still there, you're just drained. Suppression seems noble. Control yourself, stay composed, stay strong. But the cost is neurological. Every moment you suppress, your prefrontal cortex burns energy to keep the amygdala quiet. It's like holding a beach ball underwater. You can do it for a while, but eventually, your arm trembles, and when you slip, it bursts upward with even more force. That's the rebound effect. You tell yourself you're over it, but your body disagrees. Your jaw is tight. Your breath shallow. You're distracted, fatigued, irritated by small things. You're not calm, you're compressed. And compression doesn't equal peace. The more you suppress, the more intrusive the emotion becomes when you relax. Have you ever noticed how emotions hit hardest at night, right before sleep? That's when cognitive control drops, and everything you've been pushing down finally surfaces. Real-world proof is everywhere. You keep it together during a crisis, then break down weeks later. You stay positive after loss, then feel numb for months. Suppression doesn't erase emotions, it delays them, and when they return, they come amplified. It controls you by draining cognitive energy and reducing your resilience. You become someone who can't afford to feel, because feeling threatens collapse. That's not strength, that's survival mode pretending to be maturity. The counterintuitive solution isn't expression, but acknowledgement. You don't need to act on the emotion, just name it. I'm angry. I'm sad. I'm scared. Labeling activates the prefrontal cortex in a way that naturally soothes the amygdala. The emotion loses intensity the moment it's recognized as valid. Suppression is resistance. Regulation is cooperation. The emotion's not your enemy. It's your body's message trying to tell you what needs attention. You don't need to drown in it. You just need to stop silencing it. Habit 41. The satisfaction treadmill. You got the thing you wanted. The job, the relationship, the new phone. For a moment, the world feels brighter, fuller, enough. 2 weeks later, it's background noise. You're already chasing the next thing. The problem isn't ingratitude, it's wiring. The brain's reward system evolved to keep you moving, not to let you rest. Dopamine spikes on anticipation and acquisition, but once you have the thing, the system resets. The pleasure fades, not because it wasn't real, but because your brain has already normalized the new baseline. What was once extraordinary is now ordinary. This is hedonic adaptation, the built-in mechanism that keeps you striving. Evolutionarily, it made sense. If your ancestors stopped hunting after one successful meal, they'd starve. But in the modern world, it traps you in an endless treadmill of almost enough. You finally get the raise. Relief. Pride. Then your lifestyle expands. New expectations, new comparisons. Someone else earns more, and suddenly, what felt abundant now feels insufficient. You get into a relationship. It feels euphoric, then stabilizes, then you notice small irritations. You start longing for the next spark. You buy something new, and the excitement decays into ownership, familiar, neutral, mundane. It controls you quietly, by making satisfaction temporary. It convinces you that the next milestone will bring the lasting peace the last one didn't. But the truth is, the treadmill never stops. It just changes scenery. To step off, you have to change the metric. Instead of chasing novelty, invest in depth. Presence doesn't adapt, it deepens. Connection doesn't normalize, it grows. Skill doesn't fade, it strengthens. A single hour of genuine connection gives more durable happiness than a month of material upgrades. Hedonic adaptation isn't a flaw, it's a reminder. Lasting satisfaction doesn't come from what you gain, but from how completely you inhabit what you already have. You can't outrun the treadmill. You can only stop walking, look around, and realize you're already standing somewhere enough. Habit 42. The facial feedback hypothesis. Smile for 30 seconds, even artificially. Your mood will shift. It sounds trivial, but your body isn't waiting for permission from your mind to decide how to feel. The curve of your mouth, the angle of your shoulders, the openness of your chest. All of it is data your brain uses to interpret emotional reality. Your expression isn't just the result of emotion, it's the generator of it. When you frown, tiny muscles between your eyebrows send proprioceptive signals to the amygdala, the brain's emotion center, confirming something's wrong. When you smile, even faintly, the same pathways light up reward regions, subtly nudging your brain towards safety, warmth, and openness. You can literally alter your emotional chemistry through muscle activation. This is why a small act, like relaxing your jaw or opening your chest, can shift your mood faster than affirmations ever could. The body sends constant updates upward, not the other way around. Posture affects vagal tone, and vagal tone governs calm, connection, and the ability to regulate emotion. When your posture collapses inward, your vagus nerve interprets threat. When you open, it reads safety. You've experienced this. On a heavy day, you slump, your breath shortens, your head drops. You feel slower, duller, more hopeless. But if you stretch, lift your chest, and soften your face, your mind brightens almost immediately. Nothing external changed. Your physiology simply reprogrammed the emotion loop. This is embodiment in real time. Your body is the feedback system for your mind. Your habitual facial expressions, the micro-tensions you hold without realizing it, might be silently maintaining anxiety or depression. A clenched jaw tells your nervous system the world isn't safe. A forced neutrality tells it connection is unavailable. The shift is simple but profound. Don't fake happiness. Just move your face and body into openness. Breathe into it. Let the muscles teach the brain. You don't need to think your way into better emotion. Your body already knows the shortcut. Habit 43. Embodied cognition. Your thinking isn't happening just in your brain. It's happening in your whole body. Every decision, every idea, every judgment passes through a physical filter first. That's why power poses feel confident and collapsed postures feel hopeless. You're not imagining it. You're literally thinking with your body. Your prefrontal cortex, responsible for reasoning and planning, is in constant conversation with interoceptive signals, the subtle sensations coming from your organs, muscles, and fascia. When you sit upright and breathe deeply, your brain reads abundance. There's enough oxygen, enough energy, enough stability. When you collapse inward, it reads scarcity and threat. Conserve energy, narrow focus, avoid risk. Your posture determines your cognitive mode. Open postures expand perception and creative thinking. Closed postures trigger vigilance and defensiveness. That's why walking often generates insights. The rhythmic motion syncs neural activity across hemispheres, integrating emotion and logic. Sitting rigidly, on the other hand, keeps thinking constrained to familiar patterns. You can test this instantly. Think of a problem while slouched over a desk. Then stand, Open your chest and breathe. The thoughts that arrive are different, broader, kinder, more solution-oriented. Your body literally makes some thoughts possible and others impossible. We often assume mental stuckness is purely psychological, but most cognitive ruts begin in the body. Chronic tension locks your breathing pattern. Shallow breath locks your prefrontal access. You start perceiving less possibility not because you're pessimistic, but because your nervous system is communicating unsafe. If you want to think differently, move differently. Walk while you brainstorm. Sit in a new position when making decisions. Lean forward when engaging, back when reflecting. The wisdom of your mind is embodied. The next breakthrough might not come from thinking harder, but from standing taller. Habit 44. Sleep deprivation mimics intoxication. You're running on 5 hours of sleep, making decisions, driving, writing messages, certain you're fine. You're not fine. You're intoxicated, just without the fun part. Sleep loss impairs judgment and emotion regulation to a degree comparable to alcohol, and the most dangerous part is you can't feel it happening. The prefrontal cortex, your center of logic and inhibition, is one of the first casualties of fatigue. Its communication with the amygdala weakens, leaving emotional reactivity unchecked. You become more irritable, more impulsive, more certain you're right. The part of your brain responsible for knowing you're impaired also goes offline, so you feel capable even as your accuracy plummets. Studies show that after 18 hours awake, your cognitive function resembles that of a legally drunk person. After 24 hours, it's worse. And yet most people operate like this daily, proud of their productivity, unaware that their entire nervous system is compensating for damage. You can see it in subtle ways. Small frustrations suddenly feel catastrophic. Conversations spiral into conflict. Problem-solving collapses into overthinking. You start eating poorly, skipping exercise, scrolling longer, all choices made by a brain running on fumes. Fatigue begets fatigue. Sleep deprivation doesn't just slow you down. It changes who you are while convincing you nothing's changed. And because the effects accumulate, one night of recovery doesn't reset the system. The cognitive debt persists until consistently repaid. Here's what most people misunderstand. Prioritizing sleep isn't laziness. It's discipline at the deepest level. The tired brain craves shortcuts. The rested brain can choose wisely. Track your days. Note which decisions were made after poor sleep, then watch their outcomes. You'll start to see a pattern. Clarity, patience, creativity, all are sleep-dependent. The most powerful performance enhancer available to you is free, ancient, and waiting behind your eyelids. Habit 45. The default stress response. Under stress, you have a signature pattern. You fight, flee, freeze, or fawn. It's not random, it's conditioned. Years ago, your body learned which response kept you safest, and now it executes that program automatically, often in situations that no longer warrant it. The amygdala doesn't care about nuance. It detects threat and fires the sympathetic nervous system before your conscious mind even knows what's happening. The pattern that once protected you now repeats reflexively. If confrontation ever led to safety, you fight. If hiding worked, you flee. If invisibility saved you, you freeze. If appeasement avoided harm, you fawn. Each has its cost. The fighter turns every disagreement into war, burning bridges to feel safe. The fleer avoids difficult conversations and calls it peace. The freezer shuts down emotionally, mistaking numbness for calm. The fawner sacrifices boundaries, mistaking compliance for connection. None of these are chosen. They're automatic echoes of earlier survival. You felt it. Someone raises their voice, and your pulse spikes. You say things you regret, or you go blank, or you suddenly start apologizing for things that aren't your fault. The body has already decided before your prefrontal cortex arrives at the scene. The problem isn't the response, it's the mismatch. These reactions are useful when the threat is real. But modern threats, an email, a tone, a delay, rarely require primal responses. Yet your body treats them like danger. You're living in constant micro-survival, exhausting your system over imagined emergencies. To regain agency, you must identify your default. Next time you feel the surge, the urge to argue, escape, freeze, or appease, pause for 2 breaths. Ask yourself, is this response about now or then? If you usually fight, try softening your body. If you flee, try staying physically still. If you freeze, try gentle motion. If you fawn, try saying one honest no. Each time you intervene, your nervous system learns a new pattern. With repetition, safety becomes embodied, not just understood. The goal isn't to eliminate the stress response, but to widen your window of choice within it. When your body no longer has to protect you from the past, it can finally inhabit the present. Habit 46. Proprioceptive bias. You're certain your body feels fine. You're functioning, getting through your day, maybe even exercising. But you've actually been carrying tension and strain that your brain quietly filed under normal. Chronic tension, pain, and shallow breathing become your baseline. And because they're constant, your brain stops flagging them as unusual. It's not that your body stopped sending signals. It's that your mind stopped listening. Your sense of your body, called proprioception, is recalibrated over time. The brain's job is efficiency. If a stimulus persists, it fades it into the background so you can focus on novelty. That's why the smell of your perfume disappears minutes after spraying it, or why you stop noticing tight clothing after a few hours. The same principle applies to your body. Chronic neck tension? Your brain adapts. A clenched jaw? It stops signaling pain. You start to believe that this is just how your body feels. Deep inside, the insula, the part of your brain responsible for mapping bodily sensations, stops distinguishing tension from neutrality. So you lose touch with what relaxed even means. You might confuse collapse with calm or numbness with peace. And because your mind uses your body as data for emotional states, your emotional experience becomes dulled or distorted, too. You've probably experienced this. A massage therapist presses into your shoulder, and you realize how much pain you've been carrying. Or someone tells you to relax your jaw, and you suddenly notice you've been clenching it for hours. That realization is proprioceptive awareness reactivating. It's your brain remembering what it had forgotten. Your body has been working overtime. This hidden bias controls you because it locks you in dysregulation. You're anxious, but call it normal. You're fatigued, but call it productive. You can't fix what you can't feel, and so you live inside your tension as though it's home. Many mental and emotional struggles, low mood, irritability, exhaustion, stem not from personality flaws, but from unacknowledged physical strain. Right now, take a second to scan your body. Notice your shoulders. Drop them. Unclench your jaw. Exhale slowly. Feel how foreign relaxed feels. That's the point. You've been living out of alignment with your own body's truth. Once a week, spend 5 minutes tuning in. That small act, consciously noticing your baseline, starts to reset it. Over time, your body will stop whispering through pain and start communicating through presence. Habit 47. Circadian rhythm desynchronization. You think you're just a night owl or someone who functions fine on little sleep. But what's actually happening is that you're forcing your biology to operate off-beat, like running an engine on bad timing. Your body's rhythm, called the circadian rhythm, is not optional. It governs your hormones, energy, focus, mood, digestion, even your immune function. And yet most people live as if they can simply schedule life however they want. Deep in your brain's hypothalamus, a small cluster of neurons, the suprachiasmatic nucleus, acts like a master clock. It syncs with light, temperature, and behavior. When you ignore it, staying up late under bright screens, eating at midnight, sleeping at inconsistent hours, it starts to drift. Melatonin, your sleep hormone, releases at the wrong time. Cortisol, your alertness hormone, spikes at night instead of morning. You start waking tired and wired, unable to focus, yet unable to sleep. This desynchronization doesn't feel dramatic at first. It feels like mild irritability, sluggish mornings, anxiety for no reason. But slowly it compounds. Your immune system weakens, your appetite hormones misfire, your emotional regulation frays. You become reactive, foggy, and impatient. The worst part? You normalize it. You assume this is just adulthood. Think about when you've traveled across time zones and felt jet lag, that disoriented, hollow fatigue. Most people live with a mild version of that every single day, caused by ignoring their biological clock. A morning person forced to work late shifts. A night person forcing themselves awake at dawn. A student sleeping at random hours. The rhythm isn't gone, it's just misaligned. This hidden fight against your biology controls you because it drains every system that depends on consistency. Decision-making degrades, mood fluctuates, creativity drops. You might even misjudge your own abilities, thinking you're unmotivated when you're just misaligned. Here's the insight. Track your energy for a week. When do you feel sharpest? When does fatigue hit? That's your biological rhythm revealing itself. Work with it, not against it. Do deep work in your alert window. Rest during your natural dip, and respect the dark. Screens off, lights dim. Let your body know it's night. Synchronization isn't luxury. It's the foundation of functioning. Habit 48. Gut-brain axis. Your mind doesn't live in your head. It's distributed across your body, and the gut is one of its loudest voices. Your gut is home to over 100 million neurons and trillions of bacteria that communicate directly with your brain through the vagus nerve. Every second, this network sends messages upward about safety, nourishment, and balance. When your digestion is off, your mood, focus, and decision-making all degrade. But most people treat gut issues as purely physical, never realizing their mental problems may start in their stomach. Inside your intestines, bacteria produce neurotransmitters like serotonin and GABA, the very chemicals that stabilize mood and reduce anxiety. When your gut microbiome is balanced, your emotional system runs smoothly. When it's inflamed, overfed on sugar, or stripped by processed food, that balance breaks. The result? Brain fog, irritability, rumination, anxiety. You've probably noticed this connection without naming it. You eat poorly for a week, your patience shrinks, your sleep worsens, your thoughts get darker. Or you're stressed, your digestion goes haywire, then your mood collapses. The gut and brain form a loop. Stress disrupts digestion. Poor digestion amplifies stress. You end up solving the wrong problem, treating anxiety with productivity hacks or therapy alone, when your gut is still sending panic signals. Science calls this the gut-brain axis, but you can feel it in real time. A calm stomach means a calm mind. When inflammation subsides, your inner noise quiets. It's not placebo, it's biology. The vagus nerve carries constant two-way traffic. Your body isn't just responding to your mind, it's participating in it. This hidden communication controls you because it disguises physical imbalance as emotional instability. You start believing you're an anxious person when you're actually a dysregulated organism. You chase mindset tools without addressing the microbial chaos underneath. Try this. For 2 weeks, eat with your nervous system in mind. Cut out inflammatory triggers, refined sugar, excessive caffeine, ultra-processed foods. Eat whole, fiber-rich meals. Sleep well. Notice what happens to your focus, mood, and anxiety. Most people are shocked at how much lighter life feels. Your mind clears, not because your thoughts changed, but because your biology stopped screaming beneath them. The gut doesn't just digest food, it digests your life experience. Habit 49. Interoceptive training. We have 5 senses we're taught to name, but there's a 6th most people ignore: interoception. It's your ability to sense your inner state, your heartbeat, hunger, temperature, breath. It's the language your body uses to communicate with your mind. But when you're constantly distracted or stressed, that signal fades. You lose access to your own data. The insula, again, manages this communication. When it's dulled by overstimulation, constant screens, caffeine, noise, you stop feeling internal cues. You miss early signals of burnout, hunger, dehydration, emotional overwhelm. Your body is whispering, but your attention is elsewhere. This disconnect creates confusion. You think you're making rational decisions, but really you're guided by unseen physical needs. You lash out when your blood sugar drops. You misinterpret anxiety as urgency. You confuse exhaustion with failure. You've seen this happen in others. Someone gets irritable and says, "I don't know why I'm so angry." Then they eat, rest, or breathe, and the anger dissolves. It was never psychological. It was physiological. Regaining interoception means learning to listen again. Take a moment to feel your breath. Not control it, just feel it. Notice your heartbeat. Feel warmth or coolness across your skin. These small acts reconnect your mind with your biology. Over time, your intuition sharpens. Not the mystical kind, but biological intelligence. You start making better choices because you're finally including your body's opinion. Habit 50. The just world fallacy. Someone is struggling, so you believe they must deserve it or caused it. Someone is thriving, so you believe they earned it. This belief absolves you of responsibility while justifying their circumstances, and it's almost entirely wrong. This is the just world fallacy, the quiet conviction that the world is fair, that good people get good things and bad people get bad ones. It feels comforting, even moral, because if the world is just, then everything that happens makes sense. Misfortune becomes a moral consequence, and success becomes evidence of virtue. But this is an illusion. It's your brain's way of taming chaos. The prefrontal cortex craves order. It wants to believe that outcomes follow rules, that hard work guarantees reward, and wrongdoing ensures punishment. Randomness, luck, or systemic imbalance are terrifying to a mind that needs predictability. So instead, it invents fairness. You see someone struggling to survive, and you instinctively assume, maybe they didn't try hard enough. You see someone wealthy, and you assume, they must have earned it. But most of what happens in life is neither fair nor earned. People inherit privilege, opportunity, networks, timing. Entire systems tilt the board long before the game begins. The belief in a just world protects you emotionally. It tells you, if I just do everything right, I'll be safe. It shields you from confronting the unsettling truth that bad things happen to good people all the time. That randomness, not morality, often governs fate. You tell yourself you're rational, but really, you're protecting yourself from vulnerability. Because if outcomes are deserved, you can control yours through virtue. But if they're not, you have to face uncertainty. That's why this fallacy shapes your empathy. You see a homeless person and think, they must have made bad choices. You see someone with chronic illness and think, maybe they didn't take care of themselves. This is how you distance yourself from their pain, by convincing yourself you're safe from it. It absolves you from responsibility too. If the world is fair, then you don't have to change it. The system doesn't need fixing, only people do. That's the hidden cruelty of the just world fallacy. It turns indifference into moral comfort. Try this. Pick one success story you admire, an actor, an entrepreneur, even someone in your own life. Now trace their real path backward. What luck did they encounter? What privileges or timing opened doors? You'll find the truth hiding under the narrative of merit. That success is rarely a straight line from virtue to reward. And here's the paradox. The more you accept that the world is not just, the more just you become, because empathy replaces judgment and compassion replaces blame.